have had, and I know many who are present here today have had the pleasure to have met and listened to Eva many times over many years. But I was particularly thrilled to invite Eva to be a keynote speaker in a conference held in Perth in 2012. And we were just talking about how long ago that seems. But Eva is also on the International Expert Advisory Group for the review of best practice in early childhood intervention. And we really appreciate her expertise and input into this important work. So Eva is a psychologist by profession and professor of special education at the Child Research Environment at the School of Education and Communication. And I don't think I will say the name of the university correctly. So you might want to add that in when you commence.
Yeah.
But Eva's focus on inclusion is long-standing, and her work has been aimed at many audiences, including researchers, families and practitioners, and she's worked extensively with international colleagues, including Australia, and has worked for key international organisations such as the World Health Organization, OECD, and European Union organisations such as the European Agency for Special Needs and Inclusive Education. So I know there is much more to say, but I don't want to take up too much time of Eva's time to cover such an important topic for us. Just to let everybody know, we just did have a glitch where I got kicked off. So I'm certainly hoping that's not going to happen, but I'm going to be moving Eva's slides for her today. So Eva, over to you. The topic of Eva's talk is the ecosystem model of inclusive early childhood education, European perspective. So again, thank you very much for being here with us, Eva, today.
Thank you. I'm honored to be part of this and run this webinar. Inclusion and participation has been the focus of my research and all other activities for many years. And can you change the picture, Denise? I'm going to talk about the ecosystem model of inclusion that has been part of work in the European Union, or in Europe, actually. I will frame it a little with talking about preschool in Sweden. I will talk about inclusion and participation in action. And then I'll talk most of the time about the ecosystem model and then a self-reflection tool that we have worked with, and also present some recommendations from our work in Europe. First, because you're so far away, you can see it on the map here up on the top, and you're down here, and actually we are here. This is European Union. We have 508 million people living here, 27 countries by now, after England left, and 24 official languages. And here you can see Sweden. I'm right here, and that is the town I live in, is Jönköping, and it's called Jönköping University. It almost sounds like the president of China when you say Jönköping, but it's the name of the town and the university. Sweden has a population of 10.5 million, and in Scandinavia, which are those countries, including Iceland, who is here, we are about the same amount of people, I think, as you are in Australia. In Sweden, we have 21% of the population are 0 to 7 years, and there are about 500,000 children in early childhood education and care, and they are between 1 and 5 years old, and Swedish is our official language. Okay, so I'm just going to tell you a little bit of young children and families in Sweden. Our fertility rate is going down. It used to be almost 2 children born per woman, and now it's 145, which is a problem, of course. We had a boom in early childhood education and care because so many children were born, and now it's decreasing. And we have educated a lot of preschool teachers, and we have built out the system. So now some preschools actually are at risk for closing down. We have 80% of women that work outside home and 90% of men with young children that work outside home. So preschool, which is from 1 to 5 years old, is a very important part of the Swedish infrastructure. And actually, when we started building up the preschool about more than 50 years ago, it was one of the goals were that we needed women to work outside home for many reasons. So today, we have a long parental leave. Each set of parents gets 480 days of paid parental leave per child, which you can use until the child turns 8. And there are 390 days full parental leave and with 80% of the income up to $4,700 per month. And 90 days with a daily sum that is less. And one parent must use at least 90 days. So in Sweden, most fathers, do go on parental leave, usually when the child is a little bit older. But most parental leave is used by mothers, but men claim about 75% of all parental leave. And here you can see our Crown Princess Victoria and her husband. And they have 2 children, and they actually go to preschool. And there's one of the other royal family that also have 3 kids by now, the 4th coming, and they also go to preschool. So preschool is something that is a large part of life for families with young children. Actually, there is also like a family puzzle because the parents want to use the days they have for parental leave in a good way. And most parents don't want to leave their children in preschool for full days because preschool is open from 6 in the morning to about 6 in the evening. So most parents try to fix it so that they can leave the child maybe at breakfast and pick them up at 2, or leave them later, pick them up later. So it's a puzzle for all families, very much discussed how you should arrange your family life with young children. So in Sweden, preschool is for all children. We don't use the word inclusion because in the national curriculum, it says in the very first part of it that it is for all children, including all children, but the word inclusion is not used in that connection because we just say it's for all children. And it's provided for all children 1 to 5 years when parents work, study, are unemployed, or on parental leave with siblings. And children in need of special support should not be treated or defined as a group that is any different from other pupils, and their rights are not stated separately, which I will show you later can also be a problem. And some more words about our preschool, because I will finalize my presentation with presenting the Swedish system in the ecosystem model, so you need to know something about it. So preschool is voluntary, but the municipalities must offer preschool from the age of 1 if guardians are working, unemployed, parental leave with another child, or if the child has individual needs due to their family situation. And that is when they're 1 year old. Very few children go to preschool when they are that young. Most people start about 2 years of age because parents arrange their parental leave so they can be home until then. From 3 years, the municipality must offer a preschool to all children in the year of their 3rd birthday. And it could also be for children for physical, mental, or other reasons need special support for their development. That's earlier than 3 years. And from 3 years, 525 hours per year are free. That's about 20 hours a week. About this, the guardian paid a very low charge. So preschool is nothing that is expensive in Sweden. All people should be able to leave their children at preschool. And most preschools are run by communities, but there are also independent preschools, but they have the same national curriculum, and the people pay the same low fee when it's applicable to both community and independent preschool. And independent preschools are often parent or staff cooperatives, or are led by a foundation or a company. At age 2, 87% of the children attend preschool, and more than 90% between 3 and 5 attend preschool. And after preschool, we have what we call children start school at 7, but at 6, they go in what we could call a kindergarten, a preschool that is more focused on academic the academic part. And on paper, it looks very good because rules for children per full-time staff. When I 1 to 3, there are 3 full-time staff, and 4 to 5 years, the teacher has 4 to 5 children. The rate is 4 to 5 children. And for group size, 1 to 3 years, there should be 12 children, and 4 to 5 up to 15 children. So those are the how it's meant to be. The majority of children who need special support due to a permanent good condition or temporary needs are included in a regular preschool context that is close to where they live, and they go to preschool with other children in the neighborhood. In the larger cities, it could be different because there are so many different kinds of focuses of preschools, and parents can choose to send their children to a preschool that is not in the neighborhood. And in Sweden, 3 to 4 children are formally identified that they have special needs of different kinds. But we can also see that up to 20% when children are identified by the preschool teachers, and that's a big gap, which is formal, and how preschool teachers think about children in need of special support. And this is the number of children they think are in need of special support is increasing, very much dependent on that we have very neuropsychiatric diagnoses that are diagnosed earlier today than before. So what about inclusion? I was recently in Singapore in a conference, and the title of this conference was Inclusion, Participation in Action. And I think that's a very good way of defining participation, because participation is not only, it's both being there, you have to be in preschool to participate, but also you have to be engaged. So the main outcome of inclusive early childhood education is participation of each child in social and learning experiences in preschool. And then it's conceptualized as attendance and involvement. And involvement, one part of involvement is engagement, and engagement is enabled by both the structures in the setting that sets the scene for the processes in preschool, and also actions in the everyday life of preschool. And this is related both to child characteristics and environmental characteristics. And I think it's really important to think of it that the participation is the responsibility very much, that physical and social environment and the interactions in preschool. And we are inspired by the definitions and about the thoughts about participation from Christine Imms in Australia, certainly. I think you know her, and Mats Granlund, and you can see other people are also some of the people that were part of the conference in 2012. So this was a background presenting how preschool is in Sweden, to talk about the ecosystem model of inclusive early childhood education, a European perspective. This project was run by the European Agency for Special Needs and Inclusive Education from 2015 to 17. And it's based on analysis of descriptions of the system and on examples of INCI provisions across 32 European countries. This is not only the European Union. There are countries in Europe that are not part of European Union that have been part of or included in the European Agency. So the European Agency has 31 member countries, and you see the countries here, most of them that are black around, all Scandinavia, for example, most countries in the middle of west of Europe, and also most countries in the south of Europe. And the European Agency is the initiative from the ministries in all those countries, which means that we have had very good access to a lot of data and statistics about education in the different countries, and also we also have a short way up to the ministries in the different countries and to create collaborations. And the shared vision for inclusive, well, the ultimate vision for inclusive education system is that all learners of any age are provided with meaningful, high quality educational opportunities in their local community alongside their friends and peers. It's a very right forward vision, and I think it's a good way to express inclusive and describe inclusive education. And there's also you can see there's this website. You can find lots and lots of information on the European Agency website. I'll talk a little more about that later. The ecosystem model of inclusive education. It is inspired by a combination of three frameworks. It's a structured process outcome framework, it's also an ecological systems framework, and I'm sure many of you have heard about those before and are know about those frameworks, and also the inclusive education framework from the European Agency that was part of the start of this project. The model is grounded in project data, and I'll show what kind of data we have used. And it sets out the key factors of quality IECI in 5 dimensions. And what's important, that this model is based on increasing and enabling collaboration among policymakers, researchers, and practitioners. So in this project that were run between 2015 and 2017, we collaborated with policymakers and practitioners, and we had reference groups with politicians and also practitioners, and the project was presented for policymakers in the countries a number of times during and after we finished the project. I'll talk later on about where you can find information, both in articles, but mostly all the information and all the reports that this project have created. The goal for IECI was to identify, analyze, and promote the main characteristics of quality IECI for all children. We started to doing a literature review, and it's extensive. You can find it on the web. And what we found when we looked at this is that it's dependent very much on quality, and there are a lot of research that promotes inclusion depending on looking at different practices in different countries. And there's also on the macro level a number of studies that show that inclusive early childhood education has very many different results on different levels. And there are different, can say, brands of research that look at inclusive early childhood education in different ways. And one of the things that's important that is you need to define quality, and you need to know what is quality, because you can't just say that inclusion promotes quality per se. It also depends on actually how you work with inclusive early childhood education. So quality is really important, and I know also that the quality is important in Australia, and how you talk about quality in relation to inclusion. So this was the literature and policy review that we made. Then we did the different ministries, collected data and provided for us data about the system in the country. And we have descriptions of the different countries. You can look at it on the web. And then we also asked for descriptions of IECI settings that were inclusive from those 28 countries. Actually, we had 32 because England wanted to send in from both Wales and Scotland, for example. And then we made case study visit to 8 examples. So we spent about a week in different countries with the reference group and with the researchers, and we made visits to a number of settings in 8 of those different countries that were spread across Europe. And we also had the country questionnaires, and that's what I talked about before. That's based on national policy and practices. And that resulted in the development of the ecosystem model and also self-reflection tool. So a little more about the literature and policy review. So it provided the conceptual framework and a review about literature and all policy papers on the project themes. I talked about that before. And country questionnaires from all the countries, examples of inclusive practices, and qualitative analysis of the examples. So this is how we used all this information and made a qualitative analysis and kind of, it was a big puzzle and put it together in the framework of structure, process, and outcome. And we also used the case study visits for that, what we did in the very end of the analysis, to look at how we can put those study visits also in the model if they did, what did they contribute to and how did they fit in. And there's an article about that I will show you later about in the reference list, where you can read about our analysis. So this is the ecosystem model. This is what we came up with, and you can find it here in the synthesis report of the ISEI on the European Agencies webpage. So we ended up with putting the child in the middle, and child belongingness, engagement, and learning is the outcome of inclusive practices. And I will walk you through this model, starting from here and going out on the picture, and talk about the different parts. And then after that, I will also talk about Sweden and see how those are the outcomes of inclusion. As I said before, child belongingness, engagement, and learning. And inclusion outcomes means that all children are invited and enabled to participate and be engaged, use their strengths, exercise their curiosity and self-direction, make choices, particularly in play, express interests and goals, and engage in problem solving accordingly, and be motivated and engage in valued activities alongside and interaction with their peer group, with guidance and relevant support as necessary. So those are the outcomes. Be able to reach these outcomes. This is the second dimension in the model. And this means that children should be directly involved in the 5 processes here, not only the children, but of course the staff, the preschool teachers, and also other children in many of those processes. And we can start with the positive social interaction. That means that the child has possibilities and is engaged in social interaction with the preschool teachers and other staff, and also other children in the preschool. Involvement in daily activities means that the children are involved in what's going on in the preschool. They help out with things in relation to how much they can do. And they're involved in all the different activities that's going on in preschool. What we have seen in other studies that I should talk about now is that there are some children that are very quiet and don't take many initiatives and kind of just are there in the preschool without being involved in many of the activities. And this is a problem many times because the children that are more active get more time, and even if they are could be difficult at many times, but those children that are not involved are kind of left behind. A child-centered approach means that you work with the children and that you see each child and that you look at the child's strengths and difficulties, and actually that each child is exposed to all the activities in preschool, and also you see to that the children are involved and engaged in the activities and interactions. Personalized assessment for learning, that means that you must assess each child, and that would go more, not only development and competence, it must also consider participation in setting and social activities, interactions with adults and peers, and opportunities for independent self-initiative and social play and other activities. And in Sweden, I'll talk more about this, but this can be a problem as we do. We talk about a preschool for all children, but we don't put enough effort in personalized assessment because we look at all the children together and focus very much about the activities in preschool, but not so much about each individual child. And also accommodations, adaptations, and support. That also means that you have to do personalized assessment. You need to know each child and you need to assess and learn about what each child needs. So those are the processes that are within the setting. So the next step, we will go to the structures within the setting. That's the next level. And that is a welcome for each child. That each child is welcome when they come to the preschool in the morning and feel us being part of the group at the preschool. Holistic curriculum for all, that is what we have in Sweden, but it's not like that in many other countries. It differs a lot. An environment for all children, that means that children that have, for example, disabilities or allergies or need special support, that is attended to in the preschool. Appropriate staff qualification, that differs a lot between countries, what the staff qualifications are, and if you have enough staff with the appropriate qualifications. Cultural responsiveness, that the preschool is arranged and that the materials and the activities are also that it's the kind of activities that not only represent the main culture, but you look at where the countries children come from. And in many countries, children go to preschool come from very many different cultural groups. Collaboration between the professionals and the staff at the preschool, and inclusive leadership, and also family involvement is part of those structures. In Sweden, for example, family involvement is not so difficult to enable, because most of the time one parent leaves the child at the preschool and can talk with the professionals when they leave their child, and the other parent pick up the child, so they have daily contact with the preschool, and that's how it is for most children, but it differs a lot how this is enacted in different countries. So we can take the next picture, and those are you see, this is where the children are not directly involved, but it's about others. It's at another level that also is very important to create the infrastructure for for the preschool and for inclusion. So it has to do with the community commitment. And I said that the commitment is not always the community that's responsible for preschool or early childhood education. It can be different agencies, and it's organized in very different ways in different countries. Also in interdisciplinary, interagency cooperation, that's really important. It's about also the collaboration with the preschool, but also with the family involvement. And if the child has difficulties in some way and needs special support, this part is really important. If the child has a disability, chronic disease, or what you say, have problems with allergies and things like that, or other chronic, health issues. Yeah. And also about smooth transitions, which means that when the child goes from one preschool to another, or from preschool to a higher level, start this year we have before school, then there needs to be information that is from the preschool to the place where the child transitions. So that's also important, and that means you have to collaborate with the preschool, probably with other agencies too, and the family has to be involved. Relevant in-service training is also important, in-service training about inclusion. And that's the highest level. You can take the next picture. Yeah. Well, this is dimension 5. This is factors at the regional or national level. And those are structural factors operating at this level that also influences the processes within the setting, and also influences actually how every child, the everyday life at preschool for each child who is at preschool. And first, it's a rights-based approach to all. IEC in most countries highlight that they have a rights-based approach and talk about the conventions of the rights of the child, and also about SDG 2030, the sustainability goals, and number 4 of the sustainability goals, and the provision of mainstream IEC for access for all, that there is a system that can approach all children and include all children. Also setting up national, regional standards for holistic and inclusive curriculum, and that differs a lot between countries. Many countries do not have a national curriculum. If you look at Europe, for example, I think the Scandinavian region is special in that way, because all the Scandinavian countries have national curriculum for a holistic and inclusive curriculum. Also availability of initial education for teachers and other staff for IECI. In many countries, the staff at preschools consist of teachers and assistants to teachers. And that means that many of the people who work at preschool do not have a preschool teacher education. For example, in Sweden, today we have a lack of preschool teachers, and in the big cities, there could be like 40% of the preschools that have preschool teachers that have initial training as preschool teachers. And then the other people who work are mostly assistants or child minders, as we call them. Good governance and funding of the systems for ECC, that's one of the most basic things, that you have a good system and you also have a funding system that works. Procedures for regular monitoring and evaluation. See to that the curriculum is followed and is followed in a good way. And research on what facilitates some barriers for the development of quality IECI, which are there in many countries, but it differs how this research is financed and how it's carried out. So now we have gone through all the different levels in the model So I'm just going to reflect on Sweden. I've said something about it before. I think inclusive early childhood education, it's not easy. It's so many factors that play a role as it comes to what happens in the everyday life of the preschool. So when looking at Sweden, I can say we have a rights-based approach. It's very, in our national curriculum, it starts with talking about children's rights and also democracy, and it also talks about the values that we share in a democracy. We have a mainstream access for all children, as you see, so many children that 87% that go to preschool when they are 2 years old, later on even more. We have a national curriculum with standards that are we also have monitoring and evaluation to see that all preachers actually reaches the goals in the national curriculum. The national curriculum is very much focused how the environment in preschool is arranged and what's happening in the preschool environment, and not that much focus on what happens to individual children or what are the how are, for example, children in need of special support. How the text about that is very general. As it comes to initial teacher education, as I said before, we need to educate more preschool teachers. We have done that now for a number of years, and the number of children in preschool decreases. So that's one reason why it will be better. And I think the initial teacher education, it's good teacher education. It's 3.5 year academic education. But what is missing there is the parts about children in need of special support. It used to be much more of that earlier, less now. We can also see we have good governance, and I think we have good funding. It's possible for all families to have their children in preschool. We also have a good system for monitoring and evaluation. Research, we need much more research on the younger children in Sweden. There's a trend that we put a lot of funding in research on the aging populations. And I really think we should also have much more research on the children who are going to be in charge of our world for a long, long time. So I think we need much more research about that. If we go to the next level, you can see relevant in-service training. We need much more of that. There is in-service training, but the situation in preschool is that it's very difficult to let the people who work in preschool get the time for in-service training. We have community commitment. All communities have to offer preschool for children from 1 year to 5 years old. Appropriate staff qualifications, as of course that's connected to initial teacher education and relevant in-service training. So that's a field where we need to work much better. Interdisciplinary agency collaboration, and this collaboration within the setting is also something that is discussed a lot, and we need to, in Sweden, to find better ways for collaboration between the health sector and the school sector as it comes to the preschool. Smooth transitions. We know too little about that. I think we need to put more effort into that. And family involvement, as I said before, is something that is, since most family have a lot of the preschool, since they on a daily contact, it works quite well most of the time. And then when we come to inside the setting, welcome for each child. I think that's good. It's preschools in Sweden are often a number of rooms, and there's a room where you come in and you bring your child and take out the clothes, and the parents, it's usually arranged so parents can sit down and you can talk for a while with the preschool teachers when you leave your child and talk to other parents and so on. So that's something that's happening all the time. We have the holistic curriculum. The preschool can also, they do focus on different parts in the curriculum, and the curriculum is something that's very important for everybody who works there. The environment for children is good, I think. What is different, I think, in the Scandinavian countries, that children spend a lot of time outside, even in the wintertime, and that there's a lot of space in the room and there are good equipment for children. Children also eat at preschool and they sleep at preschool. And most of the time, this is very well arranged. So cultural responsiveness, I think that's something that we're working on, and we need to know much more about how that is enacted in preschool. Collaboration, I think here, what's more time is needed for that. There's not enough time for that. Inclusive leadership, we know too little about. So when it comes to the processes in the everyday life, positive social interaction, I think there is a lot of emphasis on that, the involvement in daily activities. The child-centered approach is really important, from the curriculum to what is done in everyday preschool life. What is difficult is personalized assessment for learning, because we focus so much on a preschool for all children, but we don't give enough special attention to children that are in need of support. And that also is connected to the accommodation, adaptations and support. There's a lot more that could be done in Sweden. So this was just a picture of how it could look in a country, and how you can use this model just to structure what is important for the child in the middle of all this. What we also did from this ecosystem model and all the material we had, we made an environment that's a self-reflection tool. And you can recognize some of the different parts in this tool here. And this tool is meant for the preschool teachers and staff at preschool. It's like a structure for how they can reflect on the inclusiveness of the preschool. And we have done some studies about how this works. And it's been a lot of interest in that. So, for example, in the European Council recommendation 2019 on high quality early childhood education and care, they referred to our project, and especially lifted up the importance of self-reflection. And you can see there the model of the EU quality framework for ECEC. There are things that you also can see in the ecosystem model, but it's much more detailed and worked out in another way. This is more on the policy level then. So those are the recommendations from IEC. There's a lot of recommendations, and I will not go through all of them, but you will have access to this presentation so you can look at them later. So you can see the recommendations is you shouldn't secure not only attendance, but also engagement. And that assessment of a children accounts for the level of child participation in learning and social activities and interaction with adults and peers. So you should ensure the assessment. And I can just lift some other points. Prioritize the development and use of tools for improving the inclusiveness of the physical and social environment. So the self-reflection tool is one of those. And promote collaborations among all sectors and disciplines together with practitioners, families, and local communities to enhance the quality of all children's belongingness, engagement, and learning. So Well, in the material from the Inclusive Early Childhood Education Project, you can find on the web. And what is interesting, I think, and what is very good is that some of the material, not all of it, but a lot, the most important parts, they are translated into 26 different languages. So, for example, we have, this is in English, and you can see, but this is in Swedish, it's in Danish, and it's in Norwegian, Finnish. I don't know what this last language is, but it's interesting because in Europe there are so many different cultures and languages, and it's really important for the European agency to reach out to all the different countries and involve all the different countries. So here are some publications, and you can find them on the web. And there are those are journals in international research, scientific journals. Well, I say thank you, and I see it's almost 9 o'clock, but we should have some time for questions.